Good day, viewers, wherever you're viewing us from across the world. I want to welcome you to the first episode of Leadership Health Saturday. And today we're going to be talking everything about leadership and your health as it relates to your leadership skill set. The topic I want to introduce today, it's a new topic, a new term that we have coined at Global Capital Inc. and 10X Branded and Marketing LLC out of New York. And that term is called visionary and proactive leadership ecosystem. Now, just let me briefly explain what this represents. You see, on one hand, we have leadership, and on the other hand, you have proactive leadership. You have visionary leadership on one side and proactive leadership on the other hand. Now, what does visionary leadership represent? It represents the social entrepreneur. It represents a transformational leader. It represents the global thinkers. It also represents the dream makers, the game changers, and the trendsetters. On the other hand, we have the proactive leaders, and this talks a whole lot about leaders that can think ahead, leaders that can see beyond problems, and leaders that can take informed action to achieve desired results. When we merge these two is where we get visionary and proactive leaders ecosystem. Today with me in the studio is no other than Clairmonte Frank to talk about leadership. And of course, he will be bringing his twist to leadership, being one of the strong minds who would have understudied the John Maxwell thesis. Clairmonte Frank is also an academic. He served as a lecturer at the University of the West Indies, one of the highest academic learning institution in the Caribbean. He also holds a master's degree in economic. And it's such a pleasure to have him here today. Welcome, Mr. Frank.
Thank you for the introduction.
Most welcome. Today we are talking broadly about leadership health, and I believe that leadership health is relevant to everybody. It's relevant to the strategic, tactical, and operational leaders in the workforce. It is relevant to the average person out there who wants to achieve more in life. It's relevant to the family. What comes to mind when you hear the term leadership?
So much comes to mind when you hear the term leadership. And one of the things that we know about it is that it's more of a social setting, social management. And what comes to mind also is the ability to influence those who are your followers, who are your team, and to build them. And one of the things that I realized also, when we look at leadership in the context of the social entrepreneurship organization, we realize it's a key factor for the social enterprise. If you want success in your social enterprise or whatever plans you have, when it comes to promoting social change, then leadership helps to establish many goals, and it motivates people to work towards achieving those goals. The leader is someone who would be an example, a good example. The leader awakes your consciousness, make you realize that the state you're in, you can move from that into something better, right? It changes your behavior. It is also passionate about the organization's mission, because every organization has a mission that they have to follow and to try to accomplish. And as I said before, it convinces others, convince you to do your best, convince you to realize your potential so that you can achieve what you were born to achieve. And in that, you are also able to achieve high results. In all of this, if the person isn't committed to realizing the truth, the leader is the one who commits himself or herself to that important cause of helping that person to realize their value and to share their values with others. Another good thing about it is that it identifies new opportunities, whether to the organization, to society, to communities. So in a nutshell, it is the ability to inspire people to follow your instructions, and not following them by force, but voluntarily, without exercising any form of force. Without exercising any form of force. And I repeat, without exercising any form of force. And so when we talk about leadership and social enterprise, it relies on ethics, it relies on integrity and expertise, but also it relies on empathy and passion. Now, leaders in the construct of social entrepreneurship has to make positive impact and establish strong support systems among, whether it's the employees, other stakeholders and communities, and then there to nurture new future leaders. The thing about all this leadership and the health and whatever else, you cannot always hold on to leadership positions. And so it is in your best interest to develop leaders who can take the place in the social, whether in the organization or the community. Holding on to that position is not going to help the community, it's not going to help the organization to grow. And I'm saying that because as you get new persons coming on, you realize they come out with different ideas, new ideas, innovative ideas. And so if you were training them and mentoring them and teaching them, they are going to be able to develop to such an extent that it can pass on. I remember in the Bible, Jesus himself said, and he was a leader, that there will be other leaders and they will do greater things than he has done. And so that's one good example of how a leader should pass on the leadership mantle to those who are coming behind.
Great points. Great points. I want to drill in just a little bit more to the term social entrepreneurship. And a definition of social entrepreneurship would be a person or a group of persons who establish an enterprise with the aim of solving a social problem. I want to align that to some problems that we are seeing after many years of research. And one of them is that we're seeing smart people, highly educated people, they are struggling sometimes with what we call a sense of self. a sense of purpose and a sense of direction. And what exactly do I mean by a sense of self? I mean, you have mentioned early on, you use the biblical terminology. And what we are seeing is that failing to have a deeper understanding of that biblical terminology, you can have people that are living from the ideal self, that are living from the looking glass self, that are living from the self-image, but are not necessarily flowing from the real self, that sense of self, that literally says that you are made in the image and likeness of the Creator. And I have done great things when I walk the earth, and there are those who will come after who will do even greater things. Do you think that a social entrepreneur has a role to play in helping the individual to connect with that deeper sense of self, that spiritual self, that true sense of self? Largely based on the fact that we know that people can never grow beyond their sense of self. So if your sense of self is one that says, I'm lack, limitation, doubts, and fear, you become the product. You manifest your thoughts. But if your thought process now is saying that I'm abundant because it has been foretold of my life, it had been said that there are those who will come after the Most High, who will do even greater things. But that's not how people are socialized to think in life. People are socialized, they are beaten down, great ideas, they are forced to shut them down and comply with the status quo. Is there a need for social entrepreneurs to fix this? First of all, do you see this as a social epidemic where people do not have that sense of self that is necessary for organization, for life? And is the social entrepreneur has to play a greater role here? How do you see this?
Now, you gave a definition of the social entrepreneur,
Entrepreneurship.
right? And I think you encapsulate everything when you're saying that is a person who pursues new or what we call novel applications that have the potential to solve community-based problems. We're talking about community-based problems, and one of those is a sense of self. And what a social entrepreneur is willing to do is take on the risk and effort to create positive change in society through their initiatives. In other words, the social entrepreneur looks at all these basic problems. And as a leader, the social entrepreneur decides, you know what, we need to build the self person. When we talk about sense of self, for those who may be wondering, well, what are you talking about when you talk about self to self? It just refers to your perception of the collection of characteristics that you define. For example, your personal traits. What are your abilities? What are your likes and dislikes? What is your belief system, or what is sociologists would say a moral code? What are the things that motivate you? Now, these are all contribution to what is known as the self-image, or your unique identity as a person. Now, people who can easily describe these aspects of their identity, they typically have a fairly strong sense of who they are. Struggling to name more than a few of these characteristics might point to a less defined sense of self. As a social entrepreneur, therefore, you can help the person who is thinking at this lower level. They can understand what they are, But because you use initiative, because you have this novelty ideas of how to assist, then you can make that weak person get to the stage of being a fairly strong person with a good sense of self. And I hope that answers the question that you asked on how effective the social entrepreneur is, the person's sense of self.
I think that you have touched base with a number of important points there, and you've certainly amplified the importance of the social entrepreneur in this regard. And I just want to add, I do believe that based on the research that we are doing, we're seeing that people tend to flow from the ideal self. The ideal self is largely about the way that I would like to be. We're seeing persons that are flowing from the self-image, the way that I see myself, and we see persons that are flowing from the looking glass self, and that's the way the public sees you. People do things largely based on how they perceive the public see them, or they do things in a particular way to, communicate a sense of self that they want the public to buy into. But for me, the one that is most important, and in studying business and in studying psychology, you tend to recognize that they only go so far when it comes to speaking about the real self. I think Abraham Maslow, the father of humanistic psychologists, is one of those persons who attempt to push the boundaries there when he talk about self-actualization. In my book and in my view, I do believe that he's one of the greatest social entrepreneurs of all time, because I think what he was attempting to do, and he have left enough track record and data to prove that, is to really talk to human needs and talk to their elevated needs, and also leave a footprint that can help humans to actually come to that point of self-actualization. While we know that self-actualization is impossible because of the richness of human potential, I do believe that if we can just shift the conversation, shift the dialogue as social entrepreneurs, to focus on a platform, a pathway that can truly help you and I and the people across the world to connect with that deeper sense of self, that inner beauty, and to flow from there, flowing from a position where you are the abundant you. I certainly believe that this is not only going to affect the community, it's not going to only affect the individual, the families, the community, but it's going to affect the nation and in the world in a very positive way. So this, for me, is a tremendous task for the social entrepreneur. And I do believe that as we look deeper into this subject matter, it is more so needed now than ever, with all the realities that we are seeing across the world. People are not only fighting with a sense of self, a sense of purpose, and a sense of direction. With a global pandemic, people are battling with things like, paycheck to paycheck, security, cash flow security, and a range of different things. So the role of the social entrepreneur in terms of solving social problems, I believe is escalating, it's increasing, largely based on the fact that as you look at all of these social realities across the world, my belief is that we don't have enough of them that can go beyond just speaking, but can identify the formula. And I'm happy to know that you, as a representative of the Family Planning Institute, you're not just talking about these issues, because when we talk with the background, I know that you have a game plan to address these social issues. the scope in which we are looking at. And some of those areas that we are looking at is we talk about paycheck protection program. We talk about smart investment strategies. We talk about home ownership. We talk about, investment retirement account. And I think that the role of the social entrepreneur in this regard is tremendous.
And that is true, because the thing about it is that when the social entrepreneur, and what I do realize, and I agree with you, is that there are not many social entrepreneurs around. Not everyone goes into community with patience to say, I'm going to develop this person or the community. We live in a time where people are more like selfish, and service to humanity is barely a second thought. So getting into this aspect of it, it needs more than just, I just want to also look at what Eric Myers, a licensed professional counselor, explained, that having a well-developed sense of self is hugely beneficial in helping us make choices in life, from something as small as favorite foods to larger concerns like personal virtues. Knowing what comes from our own self versus what comes from others allow us to live authentically. And for those listeners, your self-image can also fit. You aren't, I am not, but you still have great value. So self-knowledge makes it easier to accept your entire self, good, bad, indifferent, both the traits you're proud of and those you'd like to improve. If you do feel dissatisfied with certain aspects of yourself, then you'll have an easier time addressing those areas when you have a strong sense of your nature and abilities. If you're lacking a clearly defined sense of self, on the other hand, it often makes it tough to know exactly what you want. Many of us sometimes feel uncertain, the best of us. We even are indecisive when it comes from time to time making important choice. And we end up struggling to make any choice at all. As a result, some of us simply drift through life, and we're carried by other people and circumstances rather than by our own momentum. And this often leads to discontent, even when nothing specific seems wrong, and you can't identify the source of your unhappiness. The social entrepreneur then is important for you. So what would they do? Help you to check in with your sense of self. So they look at where your sense of self fall on the spectrum from dark to light. And perhaps you've noticed a pattern of making choices based on what you think other people want from you.
Frank, now cutting you. Now cutting you. I just want to support what you're saying 101%, because what you're talking about is profound. The sense of self. Every single thing rises and falls on that sense of self. And you were saying that, so I just want to, give you that extra support that what you're saying is so authentic. Go on, the floor is yours.
So, or maybe you may have many ambitions or deep-seated passions and simply feel content to go through. I remember I always liked public speaking and communication and so on. And so when I wanted to start my undergraduate studies, I wanted to go into the area of journalism and communication because it's my thing, that's my passion. And then I was talking to one of those persons who were a mentor. And then she says to me, why communication? I got no money in that. Because what she was saying, maybe she had a point and she thought she was doing the best for me. So she told me, or try economics or management. I knew I did not like management. So I said, I've done well in economics before, let me try it. But it was a struggle because I'm not strong mathematically. I'm strong more in the English. And so economics is a lot of maths. And it gave me a beating. Had I gone to communication where my passion is, then I would have been having a better result. I'm saying that I say that you can ask yourself the question of, do I say yes to make others happy? It's totally fine to accommodate others sometimes, but if you always agree to what others want, you aren't living for yourself. Defining yourself mostly by relationship with others or your ability to please your loved ones can suggest a less developed sense of self. So another question you can ask, what are my strengths? Sense of self depends on not only recognizing your strengths, but also believing in your capabilities to use them to achieve your goals. If you have a good handle on your talents and maximizing them in your day-to-day life, it often means that you have a healthy sense of self. What brings me happiness? What brings you happiness? What helps you relax and enjoy yourself? What hobbies or activities make life meaningful to you? Now, everyone has a few things and people in life, and they don't want to change or lose. And identifying these important people and pursuits can tell you a lot about yourself and where you, what part of the spectrum you're at. What are your values? Do I live my life accordingly? If you have an awareness of personal values, it can go a long way toward outlining your sense of self. Because values describe the traits you prioritize. Prioritize in yourselves and how you prioritize in others. And what are some of these values? Are you honest? Are you empathetic? Are you trustworthy? Are you kind? And so on. These are values. And most persons have, I think all persons have the values, is how you use the values. Do your choice reflect your interests or someone else's? Do whatever you choose, is it being good for you or you want to please somebody else? And if you're not sure how to answer this question, look at it from another angle. Would you make the same choice if you were alone? You see, decisions mostly grounded in your desires and goals for yourself, that typically represents a strong sense of self. Over to you, Mr. Thompson.
You know, you have mentioned a number of things, and I can simply say you're not alone. You mentioned that your passion is communication, and in your mind, you know that you could have touched the world and, you know, become that strong social entrepreneur that you want to be. But the research again is showing that the people that you love and the people that love you sometimes are the people that gives you the wrong advice. not necessarily because they intend to give you wrong advice, but they are using their limited knowledge to, within the scope that they're in, to, make, advise you because they want positive outcome. Sometimes it's not always that. And one of the things and this is why having a sense of self is so important. But as we talk about the sense of self, and we talk about the scenario that you have just used, we have to also take into consideration that the average person or no one born with that sense of self. You're nurtured into that. And in most cases, the nurturing environment for that is not there. You are in an environment that nurture you to, you know, align to the ideal self, the movie star that you see, the iconic personality out there. It aligns you to be submissive. And in most cases, the submissive you uh, forces you to have a split personality because some people is one way in the congregation and another way in the public. And it's a range of different things. So I think that, the beauty about this subject matter, I know that you have developed thesis that looks at the growth curve that will allow people to find that sense of self. I know that the environment ultimately predetermine how fast that growth curve is going to be. And you have hinted on a whole host of different things. You've talked about, the sense of value. You talk about a range of different things that I think is all part of that incubating process to get persons over to that sense of self. But something that I want to just point out here, I do believe within all of us, we have that sense of what is going to work and what's not going to work. I do believe that our role as social leaders is not necessarily to say to that person, this is what I think you should do. I think our role as social entrepreneurs and social leaders is to create as much exposure for that candidate and perhaps do some observation of that individual. And your role is simply identify strengths and weaknesses. All right. Because, I want to conclude by saying that journalism and communication has so many dimensions. All right. Because they have business journalism. And we have now coined a very unique system in my new book that I am about to conclude. And we talk about the communication media ecosystem. And one of the things that research is showing us is that businesses that do not have a strong communication ecosystem, that's where your passion would have come in, they fail. We have over 50% of the businesses that start up fail not because they don't have strong brand, but they fail because they're never able to bring visibility, journalism, business communication. They're never able to reach their specific target market. That has to do with market intelligence and communicating information, making impact, converting, building confidence, trust, and credibility. And everything I just talked about there, it has to be filtered through a communication, you know, platform. And hence the need for your passion. And guess what? The biggest companies in the world that are generating at minimum, the top 100, 6 billion, all the way up to $220 billion. They will pay high cost for your skill sets in that particular field. All right, so sometime information and socialization, and this again for me is, as we align this to academics, as we align this to career pathways, we need a social entrepreneur, perhaps that can widen people's scope of understanding of the advantage and disadvantage based on the current market realities that can help them to make informed and educated decisions. And that is solving a social problem, because guess what? Many young people today, they do this subject not because I want to do it, but they do become mommy, daddy, uncle, aunt, and somebody else say I should do it. All right, because it's a status quo thing, but it's not necessarily their passion. But if I think we can have social entrepreneur helping them to solve the problem, connect in, this is a deep subject matter. And I do believe that the social entrepreneur has a tremendous road ahead. And I do believe that enough is not being done. So I would certainly like to get your view if enough is being done. And perhaps if not, why not? And perhaps you can tell us a little about some of your strategic game plan at the Family Planning Institute.
Yeah, the thing about it is that it's not done the way it's supposed, and not only in Guyana, but internationally.
Across the world. This is not about Guyana. This has nothing to do
and
with
so
Guyana.
the thing about that is that, as I said before, it takes a lot of time. And if you don't want to spend the time, then you're wasting time to try to do it. There's not much hours in the day. You hear a lot of people say, for me to do my work plus do the other thing because of the limited resource of time. However, one does not have to look on the broad spectrum of a whole community to do this. One person at a time, training. One person. Right now, I'm doing 2 persons at a time. 2. When one of the fellow got his results yesterday, he got a 4 in English. And he felt so bad and disappointed that he did not do it. I had to tell him, hold on, wait a minute. Failing this subject doesn't mean you're a failure. And as a matter of fact, grade 4 in English is acceptable at the University of Guyana for you to do whatever program you want to do. The grade 4 is acceptable. And it changed his whole self-perspective that he was not a failure. And what is sadly lacking is that there all the other young boys and girls out there were coming out to the exams and they did not make the kind of grade, and their efforts are being downplayed. So the thing about it is that we need to look at them and say, you know what? Okay, you didn't get in this way. So there's another alternative. You didn't make it in GC or CXC for the 5 subject. Christian Labor College has a program for 1 year where you do a whole host of subjects that is equivalent to those 5 subjects, CXC, GC, and it gets you into the university or any other public service workplace. So it's not, your life doesn't end because you didn't get all these subjects. And one has got to realize that especially today, with mental illness, with COVID and the pandemic, it has affected not us as adults, but when you think about those young people who've been studying, who has been affected in so many ways. Well, we don't have the system that can help them, that can guide them, that can counsel them. What happens when a colleague or a fellow student is in an accident and they are traumatized? Who comes in? Who steps in to assist? And it goes over in their efforts and in the access of health care and how they approach studies. Because you're studying and you're thinking, okay, my mother has cancer. You're studying and you say, my father is out of a job. My uncle died of COVID. Will I be next? And those young people, unlike us, tend to multiply or exaggerate the situation. It's a norm for young people to do that. And so the thing about it is that the Family Planning Institute is basically here to say, you know what? We're here for you. Call us. You see, and the thing about it, we have to normalize mental health. In which case you can say, okay, I got a flu. Mental health doesn't mean you're mad and strip walking down the road. You depressed, it's mental health. Going through stress is mental health. And if you are going through that, then your sense of self is going to falter. And my thing is that, where do you turn to? Because even those in your family who you can turn to, they're going through the same thing. Yesterday, we had a good book launching at the Bookland Gardens, where Dr. Shane Tull launched his book on mental health and being gentle to yourself. And it was well attended. Sold like about 45 books. And you realize that people are catching on to this and realizing, if I get this handbook, how can I assist that person in the family who is going through some depression? Yes, it's sadly lacking, but then we have to make it, advertise it, broadcast it, so that there comes a time when no one will ever say again, you know what, I'm ashamed to tell somebody I'm depressed, especially in our community, a Black community. You would hardly get a Black man or woman to go to first thing I tell you, I am not mad. That's a white people thing. You know what I'm saying? But we have to come to that stage where we realize that it affects everyone.
So you're right. I do believe that most people suffer in silence. Young people suffer in silence. The older folks suffer in silence. And Frank, you and I know that, you know, as we begin to talk about social entrepreneurship and social ills, there are many. But my genuine belief is that there are some key elements that I believe can help to address it. Because again, the research is showing that the lack of money can stem a number of these challenges. You know, we have breakdown in marriages, father and mother not being able to take care of family. It creates a massive amount of ripple effect. So I'm happy also to know that at the Family Planning Institute, we are supporting you guys with financial intelligence to really get people awakened to the fact that not because you might have been born poor, it means that for the rest of your life you are destined to be poor. There are ways. So, you know, we are happy to be talking to persons about smart investment portfolio. So, you know, and of course, we know in this part of the world, we need so much more of them, but there are innovative and creative things that you can do locally. I say this against the backdrop. In this part of the world, we cannot invest in ETF, which is exchange trade funds. We cannot invest in real estate investment trust. We cannot invest in, you know, we don't have the type of IRA, investment retirement account. We don't have Vanguard. But having said all of that, there are possibilities. So I know at the Family Planning Institute, combined with the networks that you guys are building with other institutions, you have a very unique wealth building initiative to really get people past that financial challenge that they're going through. And that definitely, I think, is a major part of the social entrepreneurship initiative. I just want to emphasize this a little bit. I do believe that as persons become more financially literate, they're not able to do more for themselves. They can invest more in education and higher learning. They can invest in, providing a social safety net for their family, home ownership. They can think about college education for all of their kids, exposing them to the right education. They can think about so much thing, recreation. And as you mentioned, because most persons are on the treadmill, it's about work to get food on the table, adequate time with the family to blend and to bond and to build that healthy family relationship. That is suffering. We see that happening across the world. And when you travel across the world, you see this. In countries like North America, I believe it's worse. I'm interfacing with a person that leave one job and instead of going home, they go on to another job because they have to maintain a certain lifestyle. At the moment they hop off of that treadmill, not walk away, just hop off. It affects the social standard, of life that they want to maintain. So it's a lot that has to be learned. I mean, traditionally we are taught, persons are taught, go to school, get a good education and get a good job, but then you recognize somewhere down the line that getting a good job doesn't expose you to the wealth, the financial independence that you want it to. And tomorrow we're going to talk some more about, financial health. All right. But the role of the social entrepreneur here, I must emphasize, is tremendous. And hats off to you guys at the Family Planet Institute as you take on this big challenge, because I want to say to you, it's no easy challenge, because once you start to talk about mental health, there are triggers for mental health. All right, they are triggers. All right, I do not believe that people are born insane. They're not born mentally challenged. In some, exceptional cases, they are triggers. They are social, psychological, environmental, biological triggers for these things. And at another time, we will go into that. And of course, we're going to bring in the subject matter experts to speak to these issues. However, my dear friend, can you give us some parting words, some advice? Can you, really play up the need for this and why you believe families, across the world should reach out to the institution and start benefiting from some of the unique programs that you guys have?
The first thing is recognizing where you are. What are the challenges you face? Seek help, seek counsel, seek guidance from whatever professional persons. And I'm not talking about the quacks, I'm talking about real professional persons who can assist you.
Mm-hmm.
The person may not be able to assist you financially, because most of the time the trigger is finance.
Yeah.
But an encouraging, kind word. I know in these days we can't hug because COVID. But the thing about it is that just that encouraging at somebody to just listen. Some people don't want an answer. They just want somebody there to listen to them. And if we're good listeners, as a leader should be, as a counselor should be, then we will be able to better analyze the person. Then we'll be able to offer solutions, effective solutions towards helping them. Realize where you are, understand where your position, where you were yesterday and how you feel today, and so on. I was talking to a psychologist and he says, as I was reading his book, and it was saying that If you find yourself in a rut going on to 2 weeks, you need help. You know, those bad feelings are going to come today. It might last for like about a couple of days and then it goes.
Mhm.
But if you find yourself continuously in this dark path, you're just in a hole and you're trying as much as possible and you're getting out of it, seek help. Don't think of it as, a sign of weakness. The strongest person will go through some form of weakness sometime. And so the thing about it is to reach out to us. We at the Family Planning Institute and Ms. Thompson is going to say to you how you can contact us later on. But we're there to just give you some advice, whether you're suffering financially, whether you're suffering psychologically. We have the experts there to assist you. Just
Um,
listening with
yeah,
a word of kindness and show you how to get into the light.
Frank, you have just triggered off some thoughts, and I do believe that I must say it because again, the research is showing this. We have young children out there that are saying, I wish I had mommy and daddy. There are young adults out there saying that if I had mommy and daddy, this would not have happened to me. Um, they are growing up and they're in that blame game mindset. And I do believe that a critical role that the social leaders has to play here is to really get young people and people across the board to come to that point to actually say to themselves that I am not defined by my negative experiences and the circumstances that seems to be in control of my life right now. But I want to put myself, and this is where it's so important for people to come to that point where you have that sense of self. We know many persons are not going to get there on their own. But the moment you can come to that point where you can say, I'm going to take ownership for my life. I'm going to take ownership for my actions and my inactions. I'm going to become the author and the maker, the breaker of my life. And I trust that people, throw breaker out of the window and make that commitment to become the author and the maker of their life. I do believe that the moment we can bring people to this point, you can change the whole dynamics because we have been doing research around this for the last 20 plus years. And what we are seeing is that you're not defined from where you came from. You're not defined by where you're at. You are largely defined because the great I am said that I have done great things, and there are those who will do even greater things who will come after me. And who are those one that he is talking about? He have foretold over all of our lives. In that great book that we often look up to, it says, so as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. With faith as small as a mustard seed, you can move mountains. But are we believing enough in this? And that brings me to an important point. Do we have enough social entrepreneurs within the religious body that are amplifying this kind of conversation? So the membership can now move from lack, limitation, doubts, and fear because sometimes they hold on to lack, limitation, doubts, and fear has something that is ordained, something that is spiritual, and move right over to that point that says, so as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. And you must come to that point where you recognize that the results in your life right now, the results in your life right now is a product, is a manifestation of how you are thinking, and you can change that. But we know for a fact that Many persons may not be able to change this on their own, and this is where you and your team, the psychologists, the financial planners, the the the, the leaders, I believe you can lay a dent into this, where young men and young women stop saying, "Mommy and Daddy is not responsible. They might have failed, but I can't allow that to hijack the rest of my life and my entire destiny." So I think that you guys have a tremendous role, and again, hats off to you guys as you work you work your magic in this area of social entrepreneurship. Over to you, my friend.
Thank you very much. And I'm hoping that those persons listening, that
Just before, can you give your numbers so persons can contact you I know you're working with one of the top psychologists in Guyana and perhaps the Caribbean, who is now an author. I trust soon to become a best-selling author. And I know that he has a wealth of knowledge and experience. So can you share your number so they can make contact with you?
oh, that's okay. Get me on the 638 6226 or 638 6226.
All right. And you can continue saying what you were saying.
Uh,
We were talking about,
in my age, you lose train of
social.
thought
Yeah,
quickly.
I know. I caught
But
you
I'm
trying
saying
to.
at
Yes.
the end of the years, you make contact with me and you need any help or assistance. Um, we at Family Planning Institute can offer you that um, support that you so need. And a lot of us need support from time to time, whether it be financial, whether it be mental,
Emotional.
spiritual, we
Mhm.
all need support. And as social beings, we're not isolated. We need to be connecting with people, whether here or overseas. You cannot do it alone. God didn't make us like that. And that's one of the reasons why he gave Adam Eve. That's why he gave us families. That's why he gave us
Yep.
and friends. And so the thing about that is, you know who your good friends are. Talk to them, because sometimes just talking to somebody and getting their perspective is going to shed a different light on your problem. And so that's what we're there for. You remember my number 638-6226. Call, and if you want to make contact with um, the the clinical psychologist, I can get that to you. You need to call me first. Thank you.
Okay, my friend. As usual, it's always a pleasure discussing these thought-provoking subjects. I know that it's not an exhaustive subject matter, but I did believe it lent a lot to today's topic, which is leadership health Saturdays. And every Saturday we will do our best to bring a program that looks at leadership health. And our ultimate vision here is to really help people across the region and the world to really understand this concept of leadership and health. And I do believe that every single person, regardless of where you are, you need to understand leadership. This is your life that we're talking about. Your life is translated into, you know, your role and responsibility as a spouse, as a husband, as a wife, as a mother, as a father. And I'm certain that the Family Planning Institute will be playing a tremendous role to ensure that you really build up a strong sense of self to complement your leadership style, build up a strong sense of direction to complement your leadership style, a strong sense of purpose, because to live with purpose, it's absolutely necessary in this world. And perhaps, Frank,
Yeah.
later on about that purpose-driven life, and how to build leadership around visionary leadership and proactive leadership around that. I like this story because to me, play on the biblical terminology. So as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. So as we try to talk about purpose, we really put people in that mindset where they start to say, I should not live life in a free fall any longer. I should live life with a purpose. My purpose is to make sure that my spouse, is the happiest, husband or wife, or my kids are the smartest kids the world has ever known. And you create that environment to make it happen. They themselves, as we talk about social entrepreneurship, they are social entrepreneurs, but they have to learn the tools and the systems to do it well. And that's where you guys come in at this Family Planning Institute. All right, my friend.
Okay.
Thanks again, and I look forward to doing this again with you next Saturday. We call this.
Yeah. And because the self is so wide,
Yeah,
there's a whole lot of information here
I
that
know.
we can spill out from. So
I know.
yeah, we can continue this next week.
Excellent. And audience, do look out for Sunday program. We will be talking about financial health. We're going deep into financial health Sundays. So remember to tune in, you log into Facebook, search for us there, and we'll be talking a whole lot about your financial health. Be blessed and see you in the next broadcast. Thanks a lot, my friend.
Okay, thank you. Enjoy your weekend.
You too, my friend. Bye.